In 2013, at the edge of the Red Sea, a papyrus was discovered. Merer's Papyrus, the captain's diary, which dates from the time of Khufu. It is the oldest papyrus ever discovered. In this papyrus, there is no mention of the size of the stone transported by Merer. 3 tons is a very small stone in Egypt. The boat, reconstructed with care and fidelity, almost sank with the block. Even removing 1 ton, the boat struggled to bear the weight. It risked capsizing at any time. How then did they get the granite stone from the king's chamber, which weighs 70 tons, and lift it 50 meters high? The film shows 40 men struggling to pull the stone weighing 2 tons from the port to the site. This is just the base of the statue of Ramses. The theories imply one must also bring this monolith from the other side of the Nile, 200 kilometers away. With which boat? There is also the Aswan obelisk, 1,200 tons of granite, which awaits them. Here's the kind of crane and how many it would take to lift it. Granite is one of the hardest stones on Earth. 7 out of 10 on the Mohs scale of mineral hardness. Nowadays, granite is only cut using a diamond-tooth saw, cooled with water and in a straight line. In official documentaries, we are shown experiments where granite is cut with a copper saw and sand. They managed to cut in a straight line and take out a cylindrical core.
I put forward that it was heated with the solar lenses.
The workers in the Aswan quarry were responsible for extracting the granite in cobblestone-sized pieces, using the solar lens. The melting of the granite was done from May to August. During these months, its intensity is the strongest. Once cooled, these pieces were transported by boat to Giza, over 900 kilometers away. The small granite cobblestones from Aswan are transported by human chains. They pour the first floor of the king's chamber and the harrows in Aswan red granite. The workers laid the clay mold and poured the granite lava. Around 2650 BC, a scientist from the court of King Djoser, called Imhotep, mixed various materials and discovered that this mixture hardens after a few days and looks like a natural stone. He improved the formula and built the first pyramid of Egypt, the Step Pyramid of Djoser.
The clay limestone was heated with the solar lenses at 1300 degrees to 1500 degrees Celsius. After cooling, it becomes cement, like modern Portland cement.
With experience, the Egyptians built ever more beautiful and more captivating pyramids up to the reign of Khufu. In this drawing of the first Naqada dynasty, a map of the Earth is shown. The exploration of the Earth was quite advanced. In at least 2590 BC, Hedda, a court scientist, saluting these companions who were going towards Lebanon to look for oak wood, noted that the boats disappeared after a few minutes, diving below the horizon. However, the distance is not great. The human eye looks much further. He realized the extraordinary. The Earth is round. Expeditions were prepared. The Egyptians then left to explore the Earth. They knew that they cannot get lost. Since the Earth is round, they can always return to the starting point. The Egyptians knew navigation systems and infallibly mastered orientation. They had tools for universal measurements of distance and time, the stopwatch. The boats were fast and efficient. They were equipped to go discover the world. Between 2000 and 3000 years BC, the Egyptians crossed the Mediterranean, passed through Malta, refueled in Spain, and crossed the Atlantic Ocean in a straight line to get to Yucatan. Christopher Columbus made the second trip from the Canary Islands to Guadeloupe in 21 days. Documents speak of it. In less than 20 days, we saw land. It was an island without harbor or ports. Unable to land there, Columbus came to disembark on a neighboring island, which he called Dominica. They followed the trade winds. They arrived by the thousands. And there is no shortage of Negroid faces. In 1946, giant heads called Olmecs were discovered. We see clearly African Negro heads. The African Olmecs were discovered in Central America, at the very place where the pyramids were found. It is the Egyptians' landing place. The Olmec heads are also made of concrete. What impressed me was the Ethiopian type it represents. I reflected upon it, and indubitably there had been blacks in this country, and it had been during the earliest ages of the world. Once settled, they developed a writing similar in shape and meaning to Egyptian hieroglyphics. Far from Africa, the Egyptians invented a new variation of writing resembling their hieroglyphics. They continued to develop their beliefs and knowledge, thanks to the memories of their distant ancestors. On Stela 5 of Izapa, the Tree of Life, we see the 3 pyramids of Giza with the temples in front, the waves symbolizing the trip to America, and the roots of the tree, their descendants. Hundreds of pyramids and temples were built in Guatemala, in the Yucatan and southern Mexico. They were all aligned with Sirius, the stars of the constellation Orion. Later, they moved to Teotihuacan and Tula. Here, it wasn't whole concrete blocks like in Egypt, but natural volcanic stone mixed with concrete. The construction method is the same for Khufu Pyramid via corridors. Of course, the city of Tula and Teotihuacan were built with the Egyptian meter as a unit of measure. These buildings were not built by the Mayans. Centuries later, the Mayans and Incas arranged their lives around these cities following the departure of the Africans. The legend explaining that it was the gods who came down to build these temples endured. They settled in remote, high elevations, maybe to have peace. Wherever they went with their powerful solar lenses, these men were taken for gods. They left their imprint and their legends everywhere. Again, there are pyramids aligned with Sirius, and the site is built with the meter. The journey continues towards Machu Picchu. The Machu Picchu buildings fascinate everyone. The whole site was built in poured andesite and granite, melted into lava thanks to the solar lens. The Temple of the Sun, Korinkancha, a masterpiece, is also made of molten volcanic andesite stone. There too, a surprise awaits. The components are linked together by ferrous molecules. This means that stones contain molten iron at a high temperature, 1,500 degrees Celsius. The Egyptians melted the volcanic andesite stone with solar lenses and then poured the lava into molds. Pumapunku stones measure precisely 1 meter and 00 millimeters. That's undeniable proof that the Egyptians came here. No astronaut or alien came here, but the Egyptians with the meter and their solar lenses. No ultra-sophisticated machine cut these stones, no alien. They are molten stones, as was the Aswan granite, shale and quartz in Egypt. These stones were cast in a single mold. There are volcanoes everywhere in this area. The stones of the volcanoes were used as raw material. The concentrated ray sometimes burned stones due to an error in handling the lens. These sites were built by Afro-Egyptians with the solar lens. It seems that coexistence was impossible between these two technologically very different civilizations. Following wars with indigenous people less developed than they, Afro-Egyptians, or as we can now call them, the Amero-Egypto-Africans, migrated more and more towards the south. After their departure, the Incas continued to maintain them, but with a rudimentary technique. The technological gap is obvious. The same technique was used in Tiwanaku, the Sun Gates, and the Temple of Kalasasaya. The natives transmitted the legend that it was the gods who had built the temples. Yet, viscerally, the symbol of solar lenses is present everywhere. Afro-Egyptians must have been fewer than 1,000 or 2,000. They made the decision to leave the continent to go to these islands. From the Nazca coast, they crossed 80 to 100 kilometers and reached the first island. Then, they traveled from island to island to arrive at Easter Island.
I think that the salt that was melted to create this volcanic basalt stone was melted thanks to the solar lenses.
Ocean salt melted at 600 degrees Celsius was mixed with the volcanic ash and added to sodium silicate to make the moais with the paste obtained. Beyond the molten stone walls which resemble those of Machu Picchu in Peru and the Khafre temple in Egypt, there is further evidence that the Egyptians were on the Easter Island. The meter, the Ahu Tongariki base upon which the 15 moais are placed, is precisely 100 meters. The entire large roadway measures 220 meters. The builders of these monuments deployed the meter to the end of the world. It is inconceivable that a native population on a lost island at the end of the world needed to use the meter and that they discovered it. The exploration of the planet also took place on the other side. For the Kailasa Temple and the Ellora Caves, the rocks were cut out with solar lenses. The temple is made in a clay mold and filled with the same basalt melted into lava. The rest of the basalt is passed into the next cave. Here is one of the largest antique statues in the world in white granite. 1,000 tons. There is no white granite in or around the hill. The same technique is deployed here as in Egypt for the statues. The extraordinary Sigiriya. How did workers get there? And how were they able to transport the material and food? How were these notches made on the wall of the granite cliff?
Huge rocks placed all around and have the most bizarre tool marks which cannot be explained. For example, look at this rock. It literally has hundreds of small cubes cut out of it, and on the top we even have a larger cube cut out as though someone wanted to sit there. This is not just a theory. We have actual evidence in front of our eyes. Look here, we don't see individual chisel marks. We see long, snake-like winding tool marks which are continuous.
In Sigiriya, the rock was cut on the side to give it the shape we see today. At the top of the rock, there was a step pyramid built with red sandstone bricks. A granite swimming pool was built with a throne to contemplate the unique landscape.
This tool mark reminds us of scooping ice cream out of a container.
The gardens were built with the meter, the sacred triangle, and the golden rectangle. The entire site is oriented in the same way as in Tikal. Near the town of Gaya in India is a place called Barabar. Egyptians built the incredible granite caves here. This is how the famous Barabar caves were made. A clay mold is prepared on site. The layout is made precisely to the millimeter on the outside. Once the mold is completed, they pour the granite in lava form with the solar lenses arranged above. The granite cools and hardens. The clay is removed, and the result is amazing. Perfect corners and super polished surfaces. The Egyptians left their unique imprint here, the meter. The hemisphere of the Vanya cave measures 3 meters and 5 centimeters. The temples of Angkor Wat are built with the meter and aligned with the equinox, so that the wonderment makes a complete trip around the globe. Here is the Pyramid of Suku, which is found in northern Indonesia. Its geometry is the same as that of Khufu and Tikal. In Gosford, Australia, 500 hieroglyphs found there are referenced. There is no error, the grammar is perfect. The Gosford hieroglyphs, as analyzed and explained by Egyptologist Mohammed Ibrahim and guide Yosef Ayan, are from ancient Egypt. Some hieroglyphs were unknown and undocumented until 2012. The names of Khufu, his father Sneferu, and his son Jedefre appear in these hieroglyphs. This hieroglyph of Djefre, written precisely in this way, is not seen anywhere else in the world, only 2 places. Here in Gosford and in Giza, in the ditch of Khufu's boat. It was discovered for the first time in 1956. Imagine that there is an Eiffel Tower in Australia which dates from the same time as Gustav Eiffel. According to documentation, Gustav Eiffel never traveled to Australia. If we find no clue, it is legitimate to attribute the creation to Gustav Eiffel and to call it the Eiffel Tower of Australia, until proven otherwise. So let's call the Barabar Caves the Egyptian caves. So let's call this prowess Egyptian prowess. It was passed on discreetly from generation to generation.
Our history is written from the narrative of someone who copied from someone else's narrative and so on, which leave much to be desired about the truth of things. However, the Egyptians did not leave writings, but left their digital signature everywhere in the world. They are building with the matter. It is their genetic code.
The Egyptians may have crossed the ocean via a land bridge, a continent in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Atlantis would be the Azores. This part of the ridge would have collapsed. It is this cataclysm which Plato calls the sinking of Atlantis. Are you looking for Atlanteans? Here they are. They are in Egypt. With chemistry and physics, math and geometry in tandem, Negro Egypt allowed us to build temples, streets, houses, sports stadiums, enough to build humanity. They laid the pillars of science, the first alphabet, art, philosophy, medicine, and religions. Wherever they settled, they built a temple, and later a city was born. Let's ask the right question. Should we put an end to the mystery of the pyramids maintained by some Egyptologists? The Negroes of Africa gave their knowledge, chemistry, architecture, geometry, mathematics to all other peoples. And in return, what did they receive as a reward? Centuries of slavery, suffering, misery, massacres, and it never ends.
What is the purpose of this film? This film is dedicated to all of humanity, to unite us around this pyramid and move forward together with love, peace, and intelligence.